Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News, broadcast to you from Jerusalem. Israel is bolstering its relations with African nations. The United States is urging Israel to grant safe passage to terrorists held up in a tunnel in the Gaza Strip. French President Emmanuel Macron offers the Palestinian Authority support in drafting a Palestinian constitution. Israel is bolstering its relations with African nations. Israeli President Yitzhak Herzog concluded a state visit to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the second most populous country in the continent, during the course of which he praised the deep-rooted relations between Jerusalem and Kinshasa.
I bring with me from the Holy Land and from the sacred city of Jerusalem the warm wishes of the entire people of Israel, who share, as I do, a deep affection, regards, and curiosity towards Africa, towards this beautiful nation, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Our nations share so much. Of course, we share the deep and rooted connection to the Bible, but also a real mutual friendship that has been ongoing for decades. As you mentioned correctly, my own father, Chaim Herzog, who was Israel's sixth president, paid a historic state visit to this country over 40 years ago. And I know how moved and grateful he was to be paving a path towards friendship between our peoples. It feels so meaningful for me now to be following not only in his physical footsteps, but also in the pursuit of the same vision of friendship between our nations.
It is interesting to know that following the collective breakdown of African relations with the State of Israel in support of the Egyptian surprise attack that triggered the 1973 Yom Kippur War, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was then called Zaire, became the first African nation to re-establish ties with the State of Israel in 1982, effectively opening the door for renewed relations between Jerusalem and many other African nations that followed in Kinshasa's footsteps. And while anti-Israel regimes in Africa, such as the ANC in South Africa and the pro-Iranian government in Algeria, are working tirelessly to oust Israel from African fora, the Republic of Congo has stood tall in support of Israel's inclusion to include the African Union.
We are very grateful for your support of us in the African Union, where Israel has to take its central role and central seat, as Africa is so important to the heart of the Israeli nation for so many generations, and there's no reason why African nations should push us out. Mr. President, conflict is not only confined to the Middle East, and I'm hopeful that Africa, too, will garner the attention and aid of the world in solving its own conflicts and crises. That's why I welcome the fact that the United States of America, led by President Trump, is pursuing a peace agreement between you and Rwanda. And there are other major humanitarian crises in Africa, such as in Sudan. And I wish that the world attention will focus there rather than obsessively focusing on Israel.
Turning to the Gaza Strip, where the Islamist Hamas via its patrons Qatar and Turkey are urging the United States to pressure Israel to grant safe passage to approximately 130 Hamas terror operatives who are trapped in subterranean infrastructure beneath the southern enclave's town of Rafah. The terrorists were located in tunnels beneath Rafah when President Trump's 21-point ceasefire plan took effect and were unable to make their way to areas under Hamas's control. Meanwhile, the Trump administration acquiesced to Qatar's request, and in a meeting between U.S. envoy Jared Kushner and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier this week, the former conveyed a message to the Israeli leader urging him to release all of the terror operatives into areas under Hamas's control without their arms and which the American envoy insisted should be considered part of the process of the Gaza Strip's demilitarization. However, thus far Israel has objected to the proposal, viewing it as naive, since the terror operatives would undoubtedly pick up arms once they enter into Hamas's controlled territory.
Special Envoy Jared Kushner is here in Israel and had a meeting with the Prime Minister this morning in his office here in Jerusalem. Together, the two discussed Phase 1, which we are currently still in to bring our remaining hostages, and the future of Phase 2 of this plan, which includes the disarming of Hamas, demilitarizing Gaza, and ensuring Hamas will have no role in the future of Gaza ever again.
While the United States is working tirelessly to try and realize the ambitious 21-point plan for the Gaza Strip, the Islamist Hamas is positioning itself to preserve power in the enclave, effectively refusing to disarm. Therefore, to the growing frustration of the Trump administration and its Western allies, creative solutions are being discussed to avoid a scenario in which the temporary yellow line that separates between IDF forces and Hamas's terrorists would turn into a de facto border of the Gaza Strip, a reality which the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and other actors are working to alter by ratcheting up pressure on Israel to withdraw from the Gaza Strip altogether, while evidently leaving Hamas in power.
I've got to be honest with you, we're still working out ideas. I mean, everybody's in discussion. I think what we know is that everybody wants this conflict over. All of us want the same end game here. Question is, how do we make it work? And still a lot of ideas back and forth. So I think it is imperative that we have a Palestinian police that is in charge of the security of the Palestinians. That needs to be supported by an international stabilization force. We all agree on that. With Israel staying in Gaza, I think security is going to be a challenge. So it is imperative that we have a timeline for the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Israel cannot stay in 53% of Gaza and then expect security to be achieved.
The remarks by the Jordanian top diplomat, whose country is a driving force behind the internationally aspired recognition of Palestinian statehood prematurely, were made during the Manama Dialogue Conference, which took place earlier this month. Alongside the Jordanian foreign minister, his British and German counterparts echoed their concerns over the stalled progress in implementing President Trump's 21-point plan, stressing utmost urgency.
We really have to speed up. My fear is that we are that we are running out of time. Ceasefire is good. That was very necessary. We needed a surge of humanitarian aid, as I said before, but we really need to fill the vacuum within the Gaza Strip for security, for administration, and we really have to do that as soon as possible in order to avoid that Hamas is again taking over, I would say, power in the Gaza Strip, and that, of course, could be, again, a motivation for Israel to once again use military force, and that, of course, is not the way ahead.
But all of us know that this situation is still immensely fragile. We've seen further attacks, we've seen aid remain a trickle, not a flood, we've seen hostage families still waiting for some remains. And all parties must deliver on their commitments, and we need to also, all of us, lean in to make sure we have the momentum and the progress we need for a lasting peace, not simply the ceasefire. Gaza must not get stuck in a no man's land between peace and war. And progress is urgent.
Turning to Paris, where French President Emmanuel Macron, who formally recognized a Palestinian state in September, hosted Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas, during the course of which he announced a French initiative to establish a joint committee with the Palestinians for the consolidation of a Palestinian state.
Ce comité sera chargé de travailler sur tous les aspects juridiques, constitutionnels, institutionnels et organisationnels. Il contribuera au travail d'élaboration d'une nouvelle constitution dont le président Abbas m'a présenté un projet et visera à parachever l'ensemble des conditions d'un tel État de Palestine.
The French leader further voiced his support for the American 21-point plan, which Macron insisted, quote, paves the way for peace and the establishment of a Palestinian state. However, the French leader evidently failed to remember that according to President Trump's plan for Gaza, it explicitly stresses that while it recognizes the Palestinian people's aspiration for statehood, it requires the deeply corrupt and terror-sponsoring Palestinian Authority to comprehensively reform. Moreover, Clause 21 mentions that the United States will establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for peaceful coexistence, stopping short from mentioning statehood. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to say thank you if you're a supporter of TV7 Israel, since your donation is essentially helping us produce our daily news updates from here in Jerusalem. If you haven't yet supported TV7 Israel, which is exclusively donation-based, please consider doing so. You can donate via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, as ever, pray for our brothers and sisters facing persecution globally, along with prayers for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach. God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.